So since the release of the new commercial drums collection from VCVrack, many people were interested in how they compare to the Hora and Proc commercial collections. So in this video I will look at, first of all, what modules you get with each collection. Of course I will compare some of the sounds as well. And if you notice, I have the CPU meter on and it will stay on the whole time. So we can also compare the CPU consumption, which is quite important. One more thing I want to mention before we start is that all three collections are not sample based, so all of the sounds are synthesized, but if you are interested in sample based drum modules, there are other collections that you might find interesting. And at the end of the video we will look also at a few free alternatives you might want to check out. So let's start with what modules are included in each collection, and we will start with the VCV collection. So this collection costs $30 and there are 9 individual drum modules. So there is a kick, a snare, a tom, a rim, clap, closed hat, open hat, crash, and ride. And there is also a sort of a drum machine with a built-in mixer. So all of the modules, all of the drums are included also here. Actually here there are 2 different toms, and you can change the model also, low, medium, and high. You can also change the model of the kick from a sort of a 909 style to an 808 style. And again, there is the built-in mixer that you have global control over the mix volume. You have global accents and global tuning. And each of the drums has also a volume control and also panning. So you can also pan the drums left and right. Now we have also the Hora collection. Right, this one costs $24 and there are 16 drum models or modules. There is a bass drum, a hi-hat, snare drum, deep, which is sort of a boosted bass drum, perfect for hard techno, but not only. Bicephalus, which is a snare, a synthesizer, maracas, hand clap, this one is a cymbal. Then we have congas, right? Then we have rim shot and clave, I believe. But if you notice, there are some that are double. So for example, we have 2 bass drum modules, 2 hi-hats, 2 snare drums, and so on. And that's because there are some drum models that have a volt filter inside, so they might sound a bit different. And then we have the Proc collection that costs $25. So all 3 of them actually cost more or less the same. But this collection exists also in hardware. So if you have the hardware modules already, you will get the VCV version for free. Now here there are only 5 drum modules. We have a snare drum, a bass drum, a hi-hat, 1 module that is called clonk, and a clap, but you also get all of those utilities, all of those extra modules that you can use to synthesize your own drums. So let's really start comparing some sounds. So we will start with something simple. I will go through some of the modules, comparing the sounds. I have here the MIDI keyboard, so I can just trigger them, right? So we can go one by one and see how they sound like. Later in the video, we will have a look also at a few patching examples to see how they work inside the patch. And I will put in the description, I have a live stream that I made with the VCV drums, and I have 2 videos about the Proc modules. Unfortunately, I don't have any videos about the Hora collection, but I use them in different videos. So you might find them in different videos. Okay, so let's start. Let's start with the kick or with the bass drum, right? So we have here, this will be the VCV bass drum. We can change the tuning. The sweep, which is the pitch envelope. Right, the decay. And we have the attack, which is not the attack time. This is more the click at the transient. Right, so how clicky the kick will be. Right, more features that we have here is an accent input with an attenuverter. Right, and actually this is also sort of velocity because negative voltage will take the level down. We can also trigger it manually. And we have CV inputs for the tuning, the sweep, the attack, and the decay. So this is the VCV one, then this is the Hora one. Also here we can change the tuning and also the decay. Right, we have an FM input with an attenuator for the pitch, and we have a modulation input for the decay. Then there is the pitch decay, which is similar to the sweep we had on the VCV one. We can change where it will start and how long it will be. Right, again with the CV input. Then we have a level and also CV input. So this is also again a sort of velocity. We can change it from a sine wave to a square or a pulse and change the pulse width. And we have a built-in low-pass filter, which is also quite interesting, and also an accent level with an accent trigger input. So when you trigger the accent together with the main trigger, you can change the level that it will happen. Right, so again, this is the VCV one. Hora. Right, so the Hora has a bit more ways of changing the sound. Pay attention already also to the CPU meter. Right, I will trigger both of them. You can see there is quite a difference. Right. And now we have the proc. Now the proc modules are a bit different. So they have banks that you can scan through. Again, this is not sample based, but you can scan through the sounds. You can morph between the sounds with the X and Y, and you have two CV inputs, X and Y. Right? So this is the bass drum from proc. Right, but again, we have different banks. With all sorts of different sounds. But there is also a selection of banks in the right-click menu for each of the modules. Different modules have different banks. So here, for example, if I choose the extra bank, right, there are more sounds. So basically, this is working mostly with right, with ready sounds. You can morph between. Again, have a look at the CPU meter. Right, so again, VCV. Again, VCV. Hora. Proc. Right, so the proc modules are quite intense. Okay, let's move on before I start playing with the bass drum even more. Let's move on to the snare. All right, so the snare, we have the snare from VCV. Again, tuning. The noise is the noise decay, which is basically the snare itself. The snap is again this attack to the sound. And also here we have decay for the synthesizer itself, so not for the noise. Right, also here we have the same CV inputs. We have snap, we have decay, noise, and tune, and the accent control. Right, then we have the Hora. Again, tune, decay, pitch decay, where it will start, level, we have the level of the noise, which is again the snare itself, So we can have just the oscillator or just the noise with the decay of the noise as well. Right, and we have in this case a high pass filter. Right, and again the accent with the trigger input. And then we have again the the proc. Again, we morph through the sounds. We have different banks we can choose from. There are all sorts of different crazy things here. Let's load the effects here, for example. Which is a sort of delay even. Right, but again, have a look at the CPU meter as well. If I trigger all three of them, and I'm sorry for the noise, but if you trigger them, the CPU level will go up. And also later we will see how they react with modulation. Right? You can see the differences are quite noticeable. All right, so this was the snare. Then we have hi-hats. So this was still the snare. Then we have hi-hats. The VCV collection has two separate modules for closed hats and open hats. So this will be the closed hi-hat, again, tuning, metal. So how much of this metallic sound you would like, decay. And the attack, again, the transient. Right, and also here we have CV inputs for everything. Here in this case, we have an envelope CV input, which will control the level envelope, but we have also a mute CV input on the closed hat and on the open hat, so we can choke the hi-hats if this is what you like. Right, so when there is a trigger in the mute input, it will close the hi-hat, it will stop the sound. And again, also here we have accent. Now this is the open hat. The open hat is different than the closed hat. It's not just the same, but with different sounds. It's really a different module. Right, so if I take, for example, the decay all the way down of the open hat, right, it's quite different than the same of the closed hat. Right, so it's still an open hat. And also here we have the mute, so you can choke it. Right, so this was the VCV. Then we have the hi-hats from Hora. Here we have a closed hat and open hat. Again, in this case, it's one module, but again, with two different triggers. So we can trigger the closed hat, we can trigger the open hat. The open hat will be choked by the closed hat. So when the closed hat is playing, I will show you this in a second, the open hat will close. And we have also a global accent. Right, so this is the closed hat. We can change the decay. This can also be an open hat if you want. Right, level control. We have pitch, and this will be globally for both of them. Right, so this is the close, this is the open. Right, character. Again with CV inputs and tone. And we can choose how metallic they will be or how noisy. Right, and let's have a look at the choke. If I open the open hat, right, you can see that when I trigger the closed hat, it will choke, it will close the open. You can create really interesting rhythms like this. And here we have two extra outputs. I hope you can see this with the CPU meter, but we have a noise output and we have a metal output. So we can output this metallic sound, and we can output the noise if you want to use this in other modules, which is also quite interesting. Right. So this was the Hora hi-hat, and then we have the proc one again. Different sounds that you can morph between. We don't have dedicated decay or dedicated open hat or closed hat. You can just use a few of them, one for open, one for closed, or modulate the X and Y. And we have all sorts of different sounds. Again, also here we have different banks. So if I go with experiments, for example, we have even sort of chords. Oh, this was something else. Sorry. Right, so you get much more than just hi-hats, I guess, with the procs module, with the proc modules, sorry. Right, so again we have, where was it? This closed hat VCV, open hat VCV, closed hat Hora, open hat Hora, and then we have proc, which is doing its own thing. Right, and again have a look at the CPU meter. Let's trigger all of them. Sorry for the noise, I will take it down in post, but just have a look at the CPU meter. Right, and again later on we will see this also with modulation. Then we have a clap. This one here, this is the VCV one. Right. We have different controls here. Right, again with CV inputs. Then we have, in this case, in the case of the Hora collection, we have clap, and we have also maracas that we can choose if you want a clap or maracas. Right, high res, low res, decay. Intervals, so how tight it will be. This is just for the clap. Then again we have level, and we have again a high pass filter. And accent control, and then we have again the proc, which is doing its own thing. Let's go with something else. Let's go with tasty. Right, so this is the clap from proc. Okay, and then we have the last one for now. We will have the rim. So this is the rim shot from VCV. Be quite interesting. Oh, nice. Right, and again we have CV inputs for everything and also accent. Then we have Hora. Again, in this case we have a rim shot and clave. This is a rim shot. Decay. Or clave. Right, again, level control and accent. And we have the proc one. Now, the proc one has no dedicated rim shot module, but it has the clonk module, which is quite interesting. You have also rim shots there, but you have, again, like we saw before with proc, all sorts of different things. Let me go to this bank. Right, and again we can choose different ones. Let's go tonal. What is this? Oh. Right, so the proc is much more than drums. But you can also get drums with it. Okay, let's continue with a few patches. Okay, so here I have something ready. I have a bass voice and a sort of a sequence, nothing special, just to have the sounds in context, right? And I have the same sequence, the same drum sequence 3 times. I have it once with a few modules from VCV, once with a few modules from Hora, and once with a few modules from Proc, and we will go one by one and have a listen to the differences. So this is first of all the bass and this sequence. Right, nothing special, just to have everything in context, so we can listen to it inside the patch. Again, have a look at the CPU meters. You will see there are quite big differences here. Right, so here I have the sequence. Again, it's the same sequence for all 3 collections. Here I have a kick, I have a closed hat, I have a open hat, and a clap, right, being mixed into one channel. It will sound like this. Right, and again we can change the sound, so maybe the open hat, take out a bit. Or maybe what we can do, if I take the decay all the way up, I can use the same trigger of the closed hat to mute it. Right? Just changing the sounds a bit. Just so you can hear a bit more or less how they will sound inside the patch. Right, so this is the VCV collection. I think, in my opinion, it sounds round and full. Right, so this is the VCV one. Again, the same sequence, exactly the same sequence, but with the Hora collection. In this case, I have the bass drum, I have the hi-hat, which is again closed and open in one module, and I have the hand clap in this case. Right. Change the sound a bit. This one is a bit not so loud. Right, so this is Hora. Again, VCV. No, also this sounds a bit. VCV and Hora. And again, you can tweak everything quite a lot. Again, have a look at the CPU. Right, and now we have the proc. Now the proc I have here, what do I have here? I have here the bass drum, I have here the hi-hat, I have another hi-hat, one for closed, one for open, and one the clap module. Right, and I can start. Changing here. Maybe take a different bank. There is a lot to tweak, not to tweak, but a lot of sounds to be discovered here. There's not a lot to tweak actually, just two knobs, but right. So again, CPU meter, have a look here. Here we have 3, 4, 5. Hora we have 2, 2, almost 3, and 2. And the VCV we have less than 1 on all of them. So I think the VCV collection is the most CPU efficient. Then there is the Hora, and then the Proc is the most CPU intensive. Again, let's compare them. This will be VCV. Then we have Hora. Then we have Proc. Right, okay, let's have a look at another patch. Okay, also here I have more or less the same, just a different feel, a different type of patch, I guess. Again, I have a sort of a sequence and a sort of a bass, and the same sequence. In this case, I'm using the glitch sequencer to sequence different drums. So first of all, this will be the bass and sort of sequence, again, just to get things in context. Right, and now here I'm also modulating things, I'm triggering also the accents. So again, have a look at the CPU meter. With modulation, the more going on, the more CPU the modules will take. So have a look again at the CPU consumption of the modules. This is quite interesting. So what I have here, I have the kick. We will start again with the VCV one. Kick, the rim shot, the ride, the tom, and the closed hats. I have it triggering also the accents, as you can see here, of the kick, of the rim. I have also modulation for the accent of the tom. So again, sorry, the accent is also a sort of velocity. So you can also control the velocity with this control. So here I have sample and hold controlling it, modulating it. I have it modulating also the tuning, also the decay of the ride. And here I have also accents on the closed hats, and I'm modulating also the envelope of the closed hats. This is all being mixed, and this is how it will sound like. Right, so there is movement, velocity, accents, decay times. So again, this is the VCV one. Now we have the Hora. In this case, I'm using Deep, which is again this boosted bass drum that has lots of distortion, overdrive, all sorts of different things you can tweak. I have here the rim shot, the cymbal, toms, and the closed and open hats. And I have again modulation, so I'm modulating the drive of Deep. It has no CV input, but with the help of the micro map I can map modulation to anything I want really. And I'm also triggering accents, and I'm also modulating the congas, right? So have a look again at the CPU meter. You can see it's quite different. This is the VCV one, this is the Hora one. It's quite different. So with modulation, with accents, the different modules will consume more CPU. So this is how it will sound like. Right, I can add more drive. And this is a totally different feel than the VCV one. Right, so they sound quite different. This is again the VCV one. This is the Hora one. Right, a totally different feel. And then and then we have Proc. Now Proc I have all 5 modules, right? And I'm again triggering them. Here in this case, there are no accents, there is no decay, there is no all sorts of modulation. I'm just switching and morphing between the banks. And I also have here an envelope. For example, with an envelope you can add also sorts of accents, I guess, because I'm just modulating one of the banks with the envelope, right? So this is how it will sound like. Again, they sound totally different. It has a totally different feel from the horror ones and from the VCV ones. And here you can go in all sorts of different directions just by changing the banks here, right? Totally different. Again, have a look at the CPU consumption. Right, and already I will give you a hint what will come at the end. Since they sound, all 3 of them, they sound so different from one another. Again, VCV. Horror. And Proc. Right, so the hint is, if you want drums in VCV, get all 3 of them because they are quite unique. Okay, let's have a look at another example. Here I have something a bit more random, a bit more glitchy, much more with effects. Again, I have a sort of a sequence and a bass just to get in context, and then I have the same sequencer. It's not the same sequence because it's random, but I have the same sequencer sequencing once the VCV, once horror, and once Proc. So this is the sequence and bass. Right, and we will start with the VCV collection. In this case, I'm using the drum machine. So again, it's all of the drum modules and also a mixer. And as you can see, I have also here the toms panned left and right. So you can also pan them. And I have this sequencer, the Nutrinode, right, triggering some of the drum modules also through a Bernoulli gate, so there is even more randomness, and all of this is going to a delay, a modulated delay. I have here sample and hold modulating all sorts of things. So really this is more sort of an effect rather than really drums. But let's see how they do in this scenario. Have a look here at the CPU consumption. All of the drum machine is about between 2.5 and 3, right? Or a bit above 3 even. Let's say 2.5 to 3.5, depending on the modulation. Then we have the horror. I have here the hi-hat, close and open. I have Bicephalus, the two-headed monster, the snare synthesizer, and I have here the soft bell and clave and some toms, again with a Bernoulli gate for even more randomness, again going through a delay just to see how they sound like as an effect, as a glitchy effect. Here in this case I'm not so sure why, but they are not being triggered so often. But still, let's listen to this a bit. By the way, in this case, I'm using the toms actually as congas, right? There is the switch here. So again, more of a glitchy effect. And then we have the proc. Now look at the proc. I didn't add any delay, any effects, anything. I have just 4 modules, and I scan through their banks, right? And no need for effects because they are crazy by their own, if you want them to be crazy. Right, so there is also a difference there. Okay, let's have a look now at the pros and cons of each of them and also at a few free alternatives you can check out. Okay, so let's really go through some of the pros and cons. We will start again with the VCV collection. So first of all of the drums sound really good, round, full, at least in my opinion. They are quite CPU friendly, which is quite important, especially if you build large patches. It comes with the drum machine module that you can just add to your patch, and you have all of the sounds and most of the features in one module, including a mixer and panning options. There are mutes on the hi-hats, so you can choke them. There are accent inputs that can also act as velocity control. On the cons side, if you're looking for special, more experimental sounding drums, you will need to use additional modules for that, so they are not so deep sound design wise. Then we have the Horror collection. Right, the pros of the Horror collection is that it has many sound design capabilities, so there's a lot to tweak and modulate. They have, again, accent inputs on all modules and also built-in choke on the hi-hat and the deep modules. On the cons side, they can be quite mellow sounding, I guess, other than deep, of course. It's not necessarily a negative thing, but you might find yourself in need of additional modules to make the sounds cut through the mix. And they are a bit heavy on the CPU. And then again, we have the proc collection. Now, first of all, you can get them for free if you own the hardware modules, so you can experiment with them in VCV for free. There are also lots and lots of sounds to explore. These modules are much more than drum modules. Another interesting thing is that they come with additional utility modules, right, that allow you to create your own sounds. On the cons side, they are quite heavy on the CPU. We saw this also before with modulation and everything. They have only 2 CV inputs, so there are no accents, velocity, choke, and so on. So you might need additional modules for that. And another one, which is again not necessarily a negative thing, but I find them more fitting for effects and texture rather than for actual drums. And of course, like always in modular, if you can afford it and drums are important for you, I think that it totally makes sense to have all 3 collections. They can work really nicely together. Again, if drums is something that you use a lot. And again, as I mentioned, there are plenty of modules you can experiment with already now for free. For example, there are the 2 tremor modules from Volt, and they are drum synthesizer. You can get synthesizers. You can get all sorts of different sounds, bass drums, toms, snares, hi-hats, claps, all sorts of different sounds. You can synthesize with them. Also, not only percussive sounds, but also all sorts of glitchy sounds and tonal sounds and all sorts of different things. Again, they are available for free from the Volt collection. There is also Kickall from Befaco, which is also available as hardware and is available for free in VCVRack. You can get bass drums, kicks, whatever you want to call it, and also bass voices. This is quite cool bass voice. And there are modules that are already available from Horror for free, drum modules. So Deep is available for free, again, the boosted bass drum, and also the hi-hats, the snare, and the soft bell clave. They are available for free, so you can download them and experiment with them, see if you like the sounds and want to get the full commercial collection. There is also the Meta module from Starlink VIA. Again, this is also available in hardware. This is also a drum synthesizer. You can get all sorts of different percussive sounds with it. Of course, if you want, you can also use samples in VCV. There are many samplers. Here are just two of them, but many samplers that you can use to load your own drum samples or percussive samples, one-shot samples, and work with them. So you don't even need to use dedicated drum modules. You can use samplers. There's the Psy-Op from Feller Fabrik, which is another percussive voice that you can use to create all sorts of different voices or sounds, drums, drums and percussive sounds. And there is the drums module from Erica Synths, which is also available as hardware and available for free in VCV. This is sample-based, but still quite interesting if you need drums. And there is the Kick Baba from Comfort Zone, which is perfect for sort of psytrance, I guess, but not only. So you have a kick drum and a bass together in one module that you can use and experiment with. And that's it. I hope this video helped you a bit. Thank you for watching, and cheers.